Hey everyone. So welcome. Thank you for joining me. This is my first live stream with Coin Bureau. My name is Matt Stella. Dropped all my socials below so you can see them in the banner so you can find out who the hell I actually am. But the guys have brought me on. Like I said, this is my first stream with Coin Bureau. I'm going to be going live every Monday and every Wednesday, the exact same time. My whole goal of what I do is to really bring up the full market analysis, the full scope of what I'm looking at from a macro outlook on the market, then dive into also the altcoins. So I'm very different in the way I go about my trading elements. I'm not so much someone that's going to hold massive spot bags. I'm going to hype up tokens, none of that sort of stuff. I really do have an unbiased approach to the market. So that's my whole purpose. I want to bring you guys that. I want to show you guys exactly what I'm looking at. And it's not about going, favoritism of different tokens. It's literally just looking at the data, what's there as an opportunity, and I'll bring that to you guys live. But a bit of background before I even jump into anything. I've been trading since Bitcoin was originally $3,000. I had no idea at the time what Bitcoin really was, how big it was going to get to, none of that sort of stuff. I made money, lost money, all that sort of stuff is probably majority of people do when they get into crypto. But then I found out, if I'm going to do this stuff, I want to learn it properly. And I went on this massive battle of learning the ins and outs of crypto, the market, how it operates, how the economy affects crypto, the analysis behind it, all that sort of stuff. And eventually came up with my ins and outs of my strategies that led me to the world of leverage and futures trading, which I absolutely love. I know futures isn't for everyone, but it also, for me, it's everything. It's what I trade on the markets versus anything else. Don't get me wrong. I do love a bit of a DJing coin play, something like that. Something pops up and throw some money at it. But leverage trading and the unbiased approach is definitely where I thrive. So tonight, I'm going to bring you through, guys, Bitcoin. I want to show you guys what I'm looking at in particular. I've been having these targets since literally Bitcoin was 126K. It missed my all-time target by about $3,000. And that was my predicted pullback. I'll show you guys that just so then I can bring you guys back to my original structure. And then as to where we are today, I had a target of Bitcoin at 68,000. So that obviously smashed past, but the weekly close did hit the 68K target zone. So I want to bring to you guys that exactly what it looks like. And then also we have to see Bitcoin going over the next couple of weeks. And then I want to bring one big thing up for everyone that I think everyone at this stage is still missing. People are such hyper-focused at the moment, these small plays of what's happening. But some altcoins are moving 20% and people aren't even realizing. Now, if I'm going to make this very public, you can go check out my X. Facebook is where my biggest following is. Some people are going, I can't believe Facebook's still around, but I can tell you now there's some great conversations on there. XRP over the weekend did about a 23% pump. I jumped in on that early, took some profit over the weekend, and that then continued to move around that 20% target that I originally had. I didn't expect it to go 20% in 2 days, but it did. But it was the original target. So you guys can go back, have a look at that. I'm going to show you some tokens that has also happened on. And then I'm going to show you the tokens that I'm hyper-focused on at the moment that I think we could see the same thing happen to again. Now, full transparency. Bitcoin is the big dog. We know that. It typically dictates a lot of the market. If Bitcoin all of a sudden throws a leg to $60,000, it's a different situation. We need to be adaptive in the market. So I'm going to share screen with you guys now. Give me 1 second. I'm going to just move around a couple of screens to make sure everything comes through as smooth as possible. And if you guys got any questions, drop them in the comments. I've got 2 screens. So if you see my head turning, I've got you guys on the other screen. I can check out the comments and we can go from there. So give me 1 moment. All right. That should be coming through now. Perfect. All right, first thing off the bat, I always love to cover this on Monday every single week, is to look at what news is coming in the market, because this has a heavy effect on crypto. As much as people want to discount the fact that crypto is its own system, we'll say, it does have a massive effect dependent on what is going on in the US. All right, so FOMC meeting minutes, I'm not concerned about. I don't really care because that's already come out. Unemployment claims and core PC price index and advanced GDP is something that I'll be watching for in the later part of the week. So Full transparency, I'm not expecting major volatility over the next couple of days leading into Wednesday. I mean, we might get some disruption during the London session, but not a big deal, in my opinion. But then towards the back end of the week, when we're getting that core PCE price data, I'll be focused on that. So again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, up until Thursday, I think the market's going to be relatively stable. I think we should be able to find some great opportunities, but obviously there's no guarantees whatsoever. And before we jump into the charts, I want to make something very, very clear. Everything I do on this channel is educational focused, all right? I'm not here to give you guys any financial advice. I'm not going to tell you to buy or sell anything. I simply show you guys what I'm looking at. I set my alerts up and I show you what I'm looking at on the market from a macro outlook. So then if you want to, you guys can go ahead, look at it yourself, make your own predictions and have some analysis behind it as well. One of my big things with my style of trading is I love to set trades and let them do their thing. So I'm very different than the fact of sitting there watching the market and sitting behind my computer trading. I set my trades, go to sleep, let them do their thing. Stop loss gets hit, take profit gets hit, wake up, see what's happened, that sort of thing. So I'll show you guys exactly what I'm looking at on Bitcoin. And if you guys have any questions, like I said, whack them in the comments. Make sure you're liking the stream as well. This is my first one. Got to get this rampant, right? Got to get this pumping out there. The guys have done an exceptional job with the Coin Bureau trading channel, so we've got to support them. Keep pumping this out. So first things off the back, you guys should be able to see my screen now. Again, I'm a very, very heavy technical-based trader. So keeping things very, very simple. I try and keep it simple, but there is two key things that I love. And my guys that follow me already and that trade with me and follow my analysis regularly know that I absolutely love Fibonacci ratios, right? One of my best skill sets is using Fibonacci. I use the standard fib levels, but I also use trend-based fibs to predict where I think price is going to be moving to. So early on today, I had another stream that went for about an hour. I've already done all these charts. So I'm going to punch through them as much as possible. I want to get as much to you guys in the next 15 minutes. So first things first, my biggest target I see for Bitcoin is around the $50,000 mark. That was my major capitulation point for Bitcoin. Now, I'm very big on the fact of going, you can't just go from one target, say 120,000, and then people come to me and they're like, Matt, what's your prediction for Bitcoin over the next 6 months? It's like, I find that to be completely unrealistic, right? The way I look at crypto and any sort of financial instrument is you've got to take one step at a time. As one support or order zone or resistance zone gets hit and breaks, you then look at the next possible targets. Now, overall, from a technical basis, this bear flag that played out off what was the 3.8 fib level at 98K, I said to my team at the time, this was going to probably have a really hard and fast push, with the target being 68,000. Now, the target for 68,000 was very obvious in my eyes. It's the 200 weekly EMA. I've sort of marked that out by the white line so you guys can see it. But if I zoom in, it's that green line that's coming up right there. It's where price has essentially held for the last 2 weeks. So despite all the volatility that we've had at play, price continues to hold there. And it is also coincides with what I like to call the Trump pump. So you guys being in crypto, you would know obviously what the Trump pump was. When the elections took effect, we saw Bitcoin run absolutely crazy all the way to the 100K mark. Everyone got excited and then sort of came back down and had the retest. But as it stands at the moment, from that 126K push, Bitcoin is now down about 40%. So it's gone absolutely massive in terms of the drop, but it wasn't unpredictable. To say that Bitcoin wasn't going below 100K, I think was a bit crazy. But where we are at the moment, I think it's not a bad position. And I want to show you guys why that I think that's going to transpire into the altcoins probably over the next couple of days. But again, Bitcoin is the big dog. And if this goes down 9 times out of 10, right, the market ends up coming with it. So we've got to be mindful of that. But I've got this particular level marked out. And this is where I really want to focus this particular analysis on, is this 200 weekly EMA, because that is where price keeps holding, right? The situation we're placed with at the moment, what I'm looking at in particular is, if you see here, we're sitting at around $69,000, $70,000 mark. And I'm going to zoom into this on the daily time frame shortly, but this is where price is getting trapped. And I'm just going to mark this out with a blue line so then you guys can see this. as we dive in deeper into the charts, into the smaller timeframes, just to give you guys an understanding of where that 1.45% is. Now, I've got two situations at play here. If we start seeing candles close on the weekly time frame below the 200 EMA, it's going to be a situation where price then has to break back above. And if it fails, that's when I've got that target of $60,000 marked in once again. However, if price does bounce back above this $70,000 mark, then I do see price then heading back towards 75,000. And with anything, I'm going to show you guys in the altcoins as well, is once you get these deep pullbacks, you do have people step into the market and create those retracements. And for me, I'm looking at around that 75,000 to be my first possible target. If we do get buyers step in here off the 200 EMA to push price back up. But one of the big factors I really do want to see, and for you guys that don't understand this part, but I'm going to keep it really simple, bullish divergence. Bullish divergence is one of my favorite things to look for on the chart. And whenever I'm taking any sort of position, I look for 3 to 5 points of confirmations on a trade. And bullish divergence is definitely one of them. Now, we have not had a full bullish divergence just yet on what I use the CCI. So a lot of people would like to use the RSI. I find the CCI a lot more reactive and a lot quicker to predict. So that's why I focus on that. But I want to see what's called a full pivot take effect on the CCI, which means essentially it comes in and puts in a higher low and suggests that buyers are actually stepping into the market whilst price is actually falling lower. And that's what I want to see take effect of this point if this is where we see price holding. So to keep it very, very simple, as we dive in deeper, you can see on the daily time frame how price is getting trapped within this zone. I think right now, for where we are on a Monday, it's not a bad position for Bitcoin to hold at. The reason for that as well is the Friday close for the US market happened at exactly this point as well. I always hate when you've got the Friday US market closes and then all of a sudden, what I call them anyways, the weekend warrior price action punches price up, to $71,000. But the reality is it then creates a CME gap within the market and price eventually pushes back towards that area. I think if you look back at the stats, like 90% of CME gaps get filled. So in an ideal situation, I'd prefer today's market to open at the same point in which the US market closed, which is around where we are now. And then from there, we can make some predictions of where we think market is going to move to from there. And you can see the deeper you dive into the market is where price starts to get trapped between what I was saying is the 200 EMA and that weekly close. So up above here, you've got order zones. That's where we saw price get rejected from last night. And it's always funny because I know a lot of people get excited about weekend trading and it's great, but I'm always a big believer to sort of close out positions before that last bit of Sunday night volatility kicks in. And I actually had a short on Bitcoin playing out and did about a 0.4% account growth on that particular move down. So that was fantastic. But then I like to just reassess. I like to wait for the US market to open on a Monday before I actually open up any further trades. So my general rule of thumb is to close everything on a late Friday night when the market closes for the US and then to reevaluate on a Monday morning versus sort of getting caught up in the weekend price action. But look, last night it presented quite well. And I figured, you know what, let's take the trade. Let's run a nice big fat short position down. And that played out quite well. So to sort of summarize Bitcoin as a whole, before I jump into the alts, and like I've got on my stream, some alts are pumping 20% and people are missing them. Right now, I am very curious to the fact of Bitcoin is holding the 200 EMA. This week, I don't expect too much volatility until back end of the week, unless, as one of the big factors is the Iran-US war situation. Do got to keep a close eye on that. I did do some reading this morning that they are looking for some negotiations to take effect. So fingers crossed that does happen. I'd rather that than any sort of war, obviously. And that will help stabilize the markets yet again. If it goes in the other direction, then I do expect some real mass volatility and likelihood of probably a really heavy dump and quite fast. But until then, we'll trade what we see and trade what we've got. So again, focus on Bitcoin, get a pump, hopefully push, retest that 70,000 mark, cement that in, and then ideal world, head back towards that 75K mark. However, we start closing below the 200 EMA on the weekly. I think price will probably head back towards that $62,000 mark. Now, I'll just check the comments. I've got them here on the side. Not much coming through, so I'm assuming you guys are just zoned in and listening or haven't got any questions, so we'll keep pumping through. So I've got, you can see Asta, Pepe, XRP, Hype, Link, Solana, and STX as a couple of tokens I want to go through. Now, quick ones, guys. I'm going to punch through Asta, Pepe, and XRP and Hype really, really quickly. Now, I'm going to bring you guys into Asta. This chart doesn't look like much, but I want to show you guys how simple this really is. Look at this on the 4-hour time frame. This is one that I mentioned on to my community just recently, and now that I'm in Coin Bureau, I'm going to be dropping these as well in there. But you can see here, right, this had a very, very easy push, right? This broke what was the trend line from the top of the range here on the daily time frame. I'll show you guys that here, right? On the daily, it's very simple. Couple touches at the top, couple in the middle, a couple towards the bottom. I always look for at least 6 points of confirmation on trend line, and from a general factor, couple at top, in the middle, towards the end. And you've got a really simple strategy here. Breakout, retest, push, ends up in a 26% move, right? Not massive, not rocket science, but very just clean, simple technical analysis. Why I put my target where it is, quite simply, you can see at this point here, there's what's called a real big order zone, right? And it shows the value and essentially the number of transactions that have taken place at that particular region. So if I'm in a trading position and price bounces off this point, my take profit zone is essentially going to be here. Again, I'm a trader. I'm not here for long-term holds. So I'm in and out of the market. What I see, I jump into. And in this situation, this one here on on Asta played out really, really well and very cleanly. And again, this isn't a massive trade. It's from Tuesday to essentially the end of the week. It's 21%. I mean, 21% on a spot bag, 21% on leverage. That's happy days, right? You cannot complain about that. So that was one of the ones I looked at on Asta. Now I'm going to show you guys these because this is what I see happen on a couple of other tokens. And I feel like they're starting to gear up, and it's already, I just purchased some Link. I just purchased some Solana, STX. I'm looking for another entry. I'm going to show you guys exactly what they look like as well. Now, the other one is Pepe. Now, some people have started to discount this token, don't really focus on it as much. But the reality is when this token gets up and moves, it absolutely rips within the market. And I typically see this rip alongside Ethereum. Okay, so where it stands at the moment, I'm looking at this. From the bottom of the range to the top of the range, you'll see this here for a moment. It is a 25% move. So again, going back to the whole fact of the whole purpose of this stream, right? Also ripping 20%, no one's even noticing, right? Everyone's really focused on like some new tokens being released or the market where it's all at, it's in disarray, et cetera, et cetera. But I tell you now, what I'm looking on Pepe is quite simple. I want to see this retrace, come back, retest this support level. It's about a 10% drop to the downside. But if you look to the left, it's where it's pumped off historically. We had a nice deep retracement, obviously when Bitcoin hit that 60K mark, came back, put in the higher low position here. I run my fib level from the bottom of this range to the top to give me potential targets on where I think price will head to before the next move. And I'm targeting between the 618 and the 707, which is between around the 400 mark on Pepe. So again, very, very simple. Get the big breakout, the big deep retracement. You then pump straight back out. I'm then expecting a retest of that breakout. And then you can see here, I've already got alerts set. So I won't really look at this token again until those alerts are hit. If they don't hit this week, I'll re-look at this chart later on. Again, next Monday, maybe Wednesday. But for the time being, I look at this because it's a really, really nice, simple, and easy range to play with. So that one there is Pepe, keeping it really nice and sweet. Next big one is XRP. This is an interesting one. This is the one I absolutely love because I posted this, like I said, on my X. Now, full transparency, guys, I'm going to show you something. My X is like dead. I rarely ever use this. I just started X recently after going to the CCC campus. I just activated this. And again, my follower base on this is quite small. But I posted X on here, XRP the other day. Again, possible 20% move here at the daily close. You can see it here. Bang, that was where the entry was. I'll show you guys this on the 4-hour time frame. The entry was down here. Simple again. We had the deep retracement, the consolidation, the order zone presented itself. That means buyers are sitting there at that support point. Bang, price pumps straight out the gate, 21% move. Again, another token pump, 20%. No one talks about it. Everyone discounted it. Why? Because crypto's had a downtrend and then all of a sudden the sentiment falls off. One of the biggest things I can say is when the sentiment is low, it is when like I'm down and dirty in the trenches, making sure I'm keeping my finger on the pulse because this market flips so fast. And before you know it, bang, you see 20% pumps. So just another one at the moment. And again, with XRP as it stands at the moment, we've had the retracement, a retest of this particular support level. Again, small time frame, 4-hour play. But I am watching this one at the moment because you can see between here and here, it's essentially another 13% move. From a fibs perspective of what I love to look at, keeping this really simple, this 707 region and the 618 is always my target for pullbacks. I don't really take positions of 3.8 levels because there's a higher risk. And I find at least if I can get a nice deep entry off the 618 or the 707, I can have a really healthy stop loss. And again, I love to trade whilst I'm sleeping, essentially. That way I can let these positions sit on, let them do their thing, and a little bit less risk in my pocket. So quite a good little avenue. You've got the little morning star down the bottom. So it wouldn't surprise me if this does pull back a little bit. I'm going to set an alert here at 147. But then from there, again, if the US market's going to hold up tonight, this might be another little opportunity to keep an eye out for as well. Now, these are the bangers that I am actually more interested in now because these ones haven't taken off just yet. So hype is the first one. Now, last week I got asked about hype from one of my team members. Like, Matt, what do you reckon about hype? I said, look, you're probably going to get the pullback to around $28. We got the pullback and I had an alert go off. Now, I haven't entered this just yet, but again, very, very simple analysis on hype. And again, one that grabbed a lot of attention, but then fell off as sort of, you know, everything went into downtrend. So people sort of disappear. But you can see here, multiple touches on this trend line gives it high validation. Price has now jumped out, attempted, you know, $38. This is where people FOMO'd into the market at that order zone. People start to FOMO thinking, oh my God, that's it. Hype's running back to $50. We all got to jump in. It's like pump the brakes. This thing was completely overpurchased. Plus 300 on the CCI represents overpurchase dramatically. So I always expect a pullback from that. Now, where are we at? We're at the next big order zone. Also lines up with a 618 fib level. I'm looking at this as a potential opportunity. Again, the US market holds up over the next couple of days. Hype has been a strong performer. It's broken out of the downtrend. And you can see this order zone is sort of where I'm interested in. I've got multiple alerts just under the $30 mark, around $29, because I see this as a potential for about a 20% move. So quite excited about this one. Again, until those alerts go off, I'm not going to play around with it. I'm very strict and very disciplined in the fact of when I'm taking entries. I want to get the best possible entry that I believe for my analysis. And it's typically within these order zones that I like to see play effect. So I'm just waiting for that to sort of trigger. I'll then relook at that position, look for some more confirmations. And again, this is daily timeframes because I'd like to look at where those big fat order zones are sitting. Next one is Link. This is one of my favorites. So I've traded this token religiously for a number of years now. I have not had to edit this chart. Wow, I reckon for at least since back here, a couple of years now. Like I play around with it every now and then, but I've been waiting for this target for quite some time. Now, this target is what I call the 113 fib level. It's where market makers and price like to head towards to essentially wick the entire market out, right? Cause those mass liquidation points. It's where that October 10th dump took effect to. That 113 target now has now held up for 2 weeks in total. So I'm looking at this level at the moment, and I'm looking at the potential opportunity off this point, because off the 113 target to the next potential resistance point, which is also the 50 EMA, again, it's a 25% target. We just had a breakout daily retest. So I'm looking at this as well. So Link is definitely on my radar. Hype is definitely on my radar. That's why I said to you guys, I purchased a bag of Link. Again, when I say bag, it doesn't mean that that is my long-term holding or anything like that. Again, I can't stress this enough. I'm a trader. This thing will hit $10.92. Well, in an ideal world, I'm not saying it will, but again, in an ideal world, if once it hits, I will sell that position. I'm not going to hope it's going to keep going. I might, watch it. But the moment it hits that point, I will be triggered to take profit, and I'll be interested in taking profit. If it breaks above, retest, then I can always look at a new position. Again, my whole mantra with crypto is to take profits as much as possible out of the market versus going, hey, I'm going to hold this until it hits the moonshot, and then you get caught going around and around the world. Just like we see with Ethereum, right? It's been around the world about 4 or 5 times at $2,000 mark. And again, back up to 4,000 people just refuse to take profit. But that's what we're looking at the moment, about 25% push. So again, I'm entered a position here. I'm probably going to open a leverage position on this as well. I'm just waiting for the US market to open in a couple of hours to see how price starts to react. And Solana, this is one of the big interesting ones. I feel like a lot of people have discounted this token since it has dropped dramatically from nearly $300. It is back down to $86. It is being destroyed. However, this is the big factor that I love. When the noise drops off, the fear index pumps at all-time highs, right? You see things like this. Solana is sitting at one of the biggest order zones it's ever had, right? Buying pressure is quite high off the bottom of this range. Again, you can see consolidations in December 2023 into the 2024. Large pumps. We're back at that level. We haven't seen this level since 2023, early 2024, and holding above the order zone, right, in the midpoint range. That's what I love to see. I'm looking at this now because a lot of people are also looking at this head and shoulders formation, all right? Very, very small right shoulder. Absolutely crash landed. Now, with any sort of head and shoulders formation, from a technical basis, the expectation is then for price to then push back towards the top side. I'm expecting a potential retracement of some sort. I'm looking at this. It's why I purchased the trading position of Solana, because if this does push back up before heading down lower, it's about a 42% move back towards that neckline, back towards the 200 EMA, on the weekly time frame as well. And if you look at this on the daily time frame, it's actually broken back above, again, held, and it is also retested. Now, the downside to this is about 77% all the way down to the low. Like, that is like deep depths. But I'm looking at this range at the moment and looking at that as a possible opportunity. But keeping it very transparent, each one of these levels will be an opportunity that I'll look for as a potential take profit. $104, I'll set an alert there, but I do like where Solana is sitting at the moment from a trading perspective. So I'm sort of monitoring that one at the moment. And like I said, jumped on a bag earlier today as well. And then lastly is STX. So this is an interesting one. I feel like, again, has fallen off the radar of a lot of people. But if you look left on this chart, it has loved to play this range. Yes, it hasn't done it in quite a while. And what I mean by that, it's been in this constant downtrend for quite some time. But I'm looking at this at the moment. This is a big, big play and a big call out. And again, has to break trend lines, the whole rest. But it's about a 340% move to the top of the range, which is absolutely huge. But again, breakout, retest, the whole works. But I showed some of my followers a bit of a situation on this recently where I had a position on this on 3x. I've got the evidence. You can see it on my profiles. I took this entire move. So I did about 150% on a 3x position. You don't need to use large leverage to make profits, just to make that very clear. Be smart, be risk adverse, And with this position here, I'm looking to take one. Like my stop loss will be like a 25% stop loss. And even if price doesn't hit all the way to the top of the range, like I'm saying, again, even towards this point here at 3x, it's like 150%. So this is another token I'm very interested in, because also where I want to snipe target this one, again, the range on this one is roughly about that 17%. Not quite that 20%, but again, 17% is still a great move in crypto. And one of the biggest things to put everything into perspective is if you can make, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50% on the stock market, you're seen as an absolute god and a legend. For some reason, we've got this mantra in crypto now where like everything needs to do like 1,000x. We need 500% pumps. It's like trade what you see, secure profits. There's always another opportunity in crypto. So on that note, I've pumped in half an hour. That went very, very fast. I know the guys on the main channel have their session coming up in, I think it's 30 minutes. If I get that wrong, I do apologize, Nick and Guy, but I'm excited for that. I'm going to jump on that session. I hope you guys enjoyed my first session as well. Thank you very much for joining. I'm just going to move you guys over. Again, I'll be on Wednesday. Make sure you hit me up on the socials. I am very friendly. I am Australian, so if you're wondering where the hell my accent is from, I am an Aussie. I don't live in Australia though. And I will be in Dubai for Token 2049. If you guys are there, I will see you there in April. So thank you very much, everyone. And I'll catch you guys again on Wednesday for an update. See ya.